Hey folks, my name's Nathan Caney, an aspiring web developer, and I'm going to show you how I made this image carousel in React. I know there's already quite a lot of these on YouTube, but I found the problem with them is that a lot of them either didn't respond to touch on mobile devices, or if they did, it was just a preset animation. So if I simulate that with my two-finger scroll here, you see it actually tracks, which is the look you want, I think. So if you'd like to see how all the code works, stick around and I'll explain it. If you prefer to just copy paste it, then you can go ahead and do that. I will link the GitHub repository in the description. Right. Okay, so I'm not going to retype everything, mainly just the JavaScript. The HTML, I imagine you understand how that kind of thing works, but you just have a container for everything, a container for the buttons, a container for the dots, and a container for the images, which are just a row of divs flexed to line up in a row, and they all have background images written in the CSS. At the moment, this is what it looks like. It's just a div that I can scroll through like that. These buttons do nothing yet. Fairly straightforward. So if I come to the CSS, well, first, I'm just going to scroll down it. So if you would like to copy paste it directly from this, you can. That is it. And there's a couple of things I'll uncomment here which make it a lot more like a carousel. Most importantly, this and this. So what I've done by uncommenting those is make it so that the images cannot, well, what I mean is you can't go between two images with a scroll bar. See what I mean? It always goes to the most prominent one. Then another thing I can do is change this. Scroll behavior to smooth. That doesn't really do anything yet. It's just for when we use JavaScript to go to the next slide, it'll do it like an animation rather than just instantly. Then we want to hide the scroll bar. I can do this for Firefox and this for everything else. There you go. Now it's gone. And the only way I can scroll through these now is by holding the Shift key and rolling the wheel like I'm doing. Still nothing from the buttons yet. So now I'll actually type through all the JavaScript that we need and I'll explain it as I go a bit more slowly for you. Okay, so we've already got useEffect, useRef, and useState imported. I'll try and explain what those are actually doing as we use them. First thing we're going to use is useRef. So if you're used to vanilla JavaScript, then this is basically going to be like document query selector. This is what we're supposed to use in React instead of that. You can still sometimes use document query selector and it will work, but I've been told it's sort of hit or miss for some reason, so it's best to go with this. And how we do that is we go here and go ref, and then this has to be the same name as that. And now I can reference this thing, which is going to be very useful. Then we're going to use some state variables. One for image width. I'll give this a default value of 480. This is really just an arbitrary number though. Then one for scroll width. give that something random. And scroll position. Which will default to 0. So what I'm going to do with these, image width is just going to be the width of from here to here, like that. Scroll width is going to be the width of everything, like from here, plus that, plus that, plus that, plus that, the whole thing. And then scroll position is going to start at 0, and yeah, kind of grasp that, I'm sure. So we're going to set some of these based on the useRef. And we're going to have to do that in a use effect for some of them. So this is just going to run once when the site renders. Step 1, set the image width, which is going to be carousel ref. You always have to say .current, unlike document query selector. Offset, no, hang on, set width, like that. This confused me for a while. The reason why this has to be in a use effect is because the use effect only runs the stuff in here when the site is fully rendered. And you don't have to do something like that in vanilla JavaScript because the whole site will always be fully rendered because you include the script tag at the bottom of the page. So that'll all be rendered, and then it will load in the JavaScript, and then all the elements will already be there, and then so the document query selectors will just work. But React doesn't quite work like that, so certain things you'll have to do in this. Things involving refs generally will have to be, for example. So I'm going to set the image width. I'm also going to set the X scroll position. No, sorry, the scroll width. Yes. Which you do like that. And then I also want to set the scroll position, but I don't really need to do that here. When you first load the website, it's always going to be 0. We just need to really set that state value when the scroll position changes, so I'll come to that in a sec. But first of all, let's add some function templates that we're going to use, definitely. Like next slide. Previous slide. And handle scroll. So, next slide needs to happen when we click the right button. And this, the left button. So let's just check that works. You can always check things as you go, just with some console logs. I can press F12 and bring up the console here. So hopefully, yep, next, previous, cool. We know it's actually calling the functions when I press these now. I don't really need these. What we're actually going to do in here, carousel ref dot current dot scroll left, and we're going to add the width of one image to the scroll position. So all the images have the same width. The image width is just this from here to here. So now, hey, That doesn't do anything yet. And in this one, I'm using my friend's keyboard and I hate it. The control button's not where it would normally be. Right, there we go. Alright. Cool. Not a bad start, right? So then I'm also going to do handle scroll. Set X scroll position. I'm going to use that later. So on this whole thing, just check I've got this looking right. Yes, I'm in the right place. On scroll, call this function. And I'm just going to console log this for now. So if I scroll here, yeah, you see we get these values. Cool. And we're going to use this to make the buttons disappear when they shouldn't be there. With this X scroll position. So obviously we want the left button to disappear when there are no more images that way. And the scroll position is 0 when we're here. So we can do that by going style, and we're going to need to use the ternary operator. So when X scroll position is equal to 0, then set the display to none, or if it is not equal to 0, then make it block. Ta-da! Cool. Then we can do something pretty similar for the right button. Instead of 0, we're going to use this, X scroll width. But we're going to have to say minus image width. Cool. It just works like that. So when I scroll this all the way here, it's not the same. The scroll value is not the same as the whole scroll width. You have to minus one image from it. That's just the way it is, I guess. I had to play with this a fair bit to get it working. So that's not a bad start. Now we want to do something with the dot container. At the moment, it's just a hard-coded thing. Well, I should have pointed out at the beginning, actually, I'm using SVGs for the arrows. You don't have to. You can just like type something like or just use whatever you want, really. It's up to you how you style them. The main thing is just the code that I'm trying to explain, the JavaScript. So at the moment, I have this dot container, and then there's just one dot in it. So if I do that, oh, sorry, I've already got it in these JavaScript angle brackets, so I can't paste things. So it's just going to show you what it does. But essentially, what I need to do is figure out how many images there are inside this and make it so there are that many dots. And I can do that by mapping through an array which knows how many images there are, and then just displaying the appropriate number of these. So we're going to need a couple of extra things to make that happen. We're going to need an array. I'm going to call it number of slides array. And we'll just set it to an empty array at the moment. Then we can set that value to something in our use effect as well. And I don't know if I'm doing this in the best way. By all means, leave a comment if you can think of a better one. But I do it like this. So, hang on, let's type it and I'll explain what I'm on about. Whoops. No. So this carousel ref.current child element count, that just tells us how many elements there are inside this carousel. So we're just going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm just going to use a for loop, which is going to plus a new slide to this array every time. So child element array dot push I. Then hopefully that makes sense. So this is just going to be an array now from 0 to 4 because that's how many images there are. It's going to get that based on how many elements there are inside the carousel. Okay. So then what we can do with that is in here, the dot container, number of slides array dot map return one of these for every single one. Why can't my alt tab? Okay, there we go. Cool. That's doing something. They don't do anything yet. And in my CSS, I've set it up so that if the class name is dot, then it just shows up like that. Whereas if it says dot and active, then it shows up brighter. And we can use that. So what we want to do to make that functionality happen is set up another state variable called active slide. We need to know which one's active because we need to know which one to highlight. So let me do that next. So default as 0, why not? And I'm gonna set this in the handle scroll method. So it's going to be carousel ref.current.scrollLeft divided by the number of images. And if I show you what that looks like, just with a console log. Every time I scroll, cool. So like now we're on 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I'm going to do as well, just so it doesn't have any of these values, is round it like so. Cool. That's looking like it should. So I'm going to put that in here. Now it knows which slide is active. So we can use that information. So we want to change the class name if the dot that we're on is the one that is the active slide. And we'll know what the number of each of the dots are by this index. So the way we can do that is another ternary. Say if index equals active slide, then make it dot active. If not, just call it regular dot. Haha. Beautiful. Nearly done. So we just need to add something to make clicking on these actually do something. So we're going to want another function. Go to slide. And this one we do want to pass a value into. So to call this, we're going to need an onClick for this button. And we're going to use an arrow function because we need to pass a value into it. You can't just do that. Go to slide. And we're going to pass in this index. So I'm just going to make sure this is working first of all by logging the index. Yes. That's all showing up nicely. And then we're going to change the scroll position again. So one of the images widths represents one of the dots, right? So times it by the index. I'm very bad at explaining, I apologize, but it works. That's looking pretty good, right? And there you have it. I hope all that makes sense. I probably don't need to have any console logs. Oh no, I don't have any. Yeah, this is pretty much the way I did it, I'm pretty sure. I like the way as well, if I'm here and I click to there, it kind of shoots between them a little bit. Which is why I put that math.round on earlier. And without that, it doesn't really do that so much. And this is much more mobile, touch-friendly carousel. Sweet, right? So, yeah, let me know if you have any questions. This is the first time I've ever done a YouTube tutorial on anything, so I might not be explaining this in the best way. Apologies if that's the case. But like I say, feel free to just copy paste the code from the GitHub repo. Thank you.